Is it a game between prison guards and prisoners or human nature? Stanford Prison Experiment. This album introduces classic sociological experiments in history, taking you into human nature and analyzing human sociality. The first to appear was, of course, the well-known Stanford Prison Experiment, initiated by Philip George Zimbardo, a psychology professor at Stanford University. The purpose of the experiment was to study the psychological relationship between prison guards and prisoners in the prison system. In 1971, Professor Zimbardo transformed the basement of the university psychology department building into a prison, simulating the characteristics of the prison. 24 student volunteers were recruited for the experiment, with a commitment of 2 weeks. Each student who completes the experiment will receive a compensation of $15 per day. Among these 24 students, 12 are prisoners and 12 are prison guards. Before participating in the experiment, the students were informed that they may suffer a certain degree of infringement during the experiment, but the volunteers readily accepted. After setting up their respective roles, the experiment began. On the first day, both the prison guard and the prisoner had not fully entered their roles and were somewhat idle. The prisoners were the first to take action, and some rebellious student prisoners began to challenge authority, ignoring orders from student prison guards and making fun of them. The prison guards were a bit confused, and at this moment, the warden Zimbardo issued instructions, telling the students that the prison guards should solve the problem on their own and maintain their authority. So the prison guards began to physically and mentally torture the prisoners, including corporal punishment, waking them up in the middle of the night, and writing on them. Faced with tolerable punishment, prisoners began to protest, attempting to interfere with and obstruct the supervision of prison guards. The protests of the prisoners angered the prison guards, who began to exercise stricter control. They used fire extinguishers to spray the prisoners, stripped off their clothes, pulled out the prisoners who led the trouble, and imprisoned them, intimidating other prisoners. At the same time, prison guards carried out psychological differentiation strategies, finding the 3 individuals with the least resistance in the resistance activities, and providing material conditions of preferential treatment. Find the 3 most resistant individuals and torture them. Put these 6 people back in the cell in half a day. From this point on, the prisoners began to question each other, believing that whistleblowing and showing goodwill would benefit them. On the 3rd day, the prisoners who failed to resist began to passively endure. At the same time, prison guards began to intensify their punishment of prisoners, allowing them to use iron buckets in their rooms to urinate and defecate, thereby depriving them of their right to personal privacy, cancel meals for prisoners, and make them endure hunger, forcing prisoners to wash toilets with their hands and humiliating them in various ways. One of the student prisoners couldn't bear this inhumane torture, and his mind had already collapsed. He applied to the warden, Professor Zimbardo, to withdraw from the experiment. As the leader of this experiment, Zimbardo has also fallen into the role of prison warden, ignoring the responsibility of a teacher to students and taking the lead in considering the continuity of the experiment. He promised to give preferential treatment to the student and let the student be his eyeliner and go back to prison. The student's return to prison is undoubtedly bad news for other prisoners, as they realize that they may no longer be able to escape from this cruel experiment. Fortunately, another experiment leader agreed for the student to withdraw and found a substitute volunteer to continue the experiment. The hostility between prison guards and prisoners continues, and under this setting, prison guards take advantage of their non-existent advantage and become addicted to the pleasure brought by violence, unable to extricate themselves. Prisoners, on the other hand, accept various unreasonable demands from prison guards in a reflexive manner. The experiment did not end here, but the substitute volunteer with the shortest participation time surprisingly became the public enemy of prison guards and prisoners, because he behaved too normally, and his resistance like a normal person made him an outsider. Until the 6th day, Professor Zimbardo's girlfriend Christina Maslach visited the experiment and strongly criticized him, believing that he had truly become a prison warden rather than a teacher, and demanded that he immediately terminate the experiment. The experiment came to an end. This experiment once shocked everyone and made Professor Zimbardo famous. It has a profound impact on people's thinking for a long time. Professor Zimbardo used this experiment to illustrate the impact of specific environments on human personality and behavior, but I want to say more. Power is a poison that corrodes people's hearts, powerful and addictive. In this experiment called human nature, everyone is a prisoner, unable to escape. If resistance would result in several times more violence, should we continue to resist? The answer is yes. Not only that, but it also requires united resistance and the courage to say no to violence. If everyone says no to violence, then those violence that appears to be based on power will naturally disappear. In the next issue, we will enter the Milgram obedience experiment to reveal to what extent people will submit to authority.